proactive planning for the recovery. If you took nothing else, take that, because that really matters, doesn't it, in the moment of truth. All right, I have our closing keynote speaker for you today, and I think you're going to find this fascinating. I'll tell you, I find the topic very interesting, to understand the CISO and the police and how that relationship works with companies and why it matters. So Lina Dabit is the inspector, officer in charge for Federal Policing Cybercrime Toronto for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. She's not bringing her horse out, sorry. But I think she's going to tell you a fascinating story about her career and also how it does interact with the jobs that you guys all do today. Please help me with a big round of applause to welcome Lina Dabit. You will be awesome.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy that it wasn't, I was thinking it was going to be Girls Just Want to Have Fun or something Cyndi Lauper, but I know I've aged myself here. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to CyberX, to Maddie, all the volunteers. This has probably been one of the best conferences I've been to, and I've been to some pretty awesome ones. But from a tech conference perspective, I'm in awe. The energy in this space for the last 2 days has been phenomenal. So I just thank you to all of you in organizing, and thank you for the opportunity to bring me here. So we're going to look at, first of all, so who I am. So I've been a police officer for almost 30 years. My background is in major crime, uniform policing, drugs, intelligence, and you'll note there is no tech in there. And I loved Daniela's, when she was speaking yesterday on the panel and talking about the soft skills, how important the soft skills are. And that is literally why I was brought into our team, is to build a cyber team in Ontario for the RCMP, what that looks like, who we need to partner with, some innovation, some bright ideas, and then move forward. So it has been a learning curve. Like there's a saying that says, drinking from the fire hose. This has been literally the steepest learning curve I've had in 30 years. And, funny story, we were working with academia, with one of the big universities, and they had presentation on de-anonymizing Tor, and one of the graduate students was doing a presentation. And we're all in the boardroom, so all my tech people are there, my civilian investigators, intelligence, and I'm in the room. And we're all listening to this really awesome presentation this graduate student had put out. And I remember it finishing, and the professor said, "What do you think?" And I didn't realize we weren't muted. And I turned around to my IT guys, and I went, "Oh my God, I actually understood everything they just said." So it was a shocker to me, I think, more than it was to my team. But I'm here today because this opportunity to speak to you about what it looks like to work with law enforcement it speaks to the very heart of everything we are trying to do as an organization, especially in this cyberspace. So why is this relationship important? We need to break down these walls, and you will see it's common knowledge that policing does things a certain way, and private sector does things a certain way, and the two sometimes don't interact as well as they should. So in cyber, this is critical that we have to break these walls down. In other programs, in drugs, organized crime, you can have relationships, but in cyber, this relationship is going to be key for what we're doing. So we also need to talk about, so when we talk about communication, what do you need from us? So what does our private sector partners look at the police and say, "Hey, we need you to understand that these are our challenges and these are the things we face." And in the same way, it's important for us to be able to tell our story. Everyone has this idea that policing comes in and we've got all these fancy gadgets, and if you watch TV, they don't write notes, they don't go to court, and when they do, everything is done in 29 minutes and you're good to go. So it really doesn't address the challenges and the restraints that policing have, especially in investigations and when you're trying to get information. So before we start to talk about how we're going to work together, just a little bit about what we do as an organization. So in the RCMP, we are not your police of jurisdiction in Ontario and Quebec. So if you understand how policing works in Canada in general, every other province other than Ontario and Quebec has their own provincial police force. In Ontario and Quebec, we are not the provincial police, nor are we a municipal police force. So we are never the police with boots on the ground, as the jurisdiction. In other provinces, we are the municipal police, we are the provincial police, and we are the federal police. So what this means in Ontario is we have a really unique space that we have to fill. And there's been some growing pains and some gaps there where we have to address what does that look like. We are not going to be, if you get breached, the likelihood is it is not going to be us that's going to come and attend and talk to you and work with you, because it'll be your police of jurisdiction. In Ontario, we have an amazing relationship between all the cyber teams. So the big five, your OPP, Peel, York, Toronto, and us work very closely together, and we have an amazing relationship. And so, for example, when Sick Kids got hit, so Sick Kids gets hit, it's a critical infrastructure, so that is where we get involved, but it's also healthcare, so it's OPP's mandate, but it happened in Toronto's backyard, so it's Toronto. So how do we work that? Well, in Ontario, if there is an issue like Sick Kids, it was me calling their team saying, hey, we're here, what do you need? Do you need anything? Do you need production orders? Do you need paper being written? Do you need warrants? What do you need? We'll help. At the same token, OPP was doing the same thing. Nobody is at a point where we step on each other. We're not coming in there saying, we're the RCMP, we're gonna step in and we're gonna take over. We don't do that, and we do have a really good relationship. So just to understand that. So then that brings us to the question, where does the RCMP fit in this? So in the RCMP, we have 5 cybercrime investigative teams across the country. There's my team that I run, and we're called Toronto because we deal a lot with international partners. And if you were to say Milton, which is where our office is housed, we'd be at The Hague and people would be like, Milton, is that in Canada? Nobody would know. So we're called Cybercrime Toronto. We have a team in Ottawa, we have a team in Montreal, we have Edmonton, and we have Vancouver. What's really neat is though we are consistently have the same mandate, we also have differences. So our Ottawa team, unfortunately, simply by virtue of their geography, deals with all the political files, Parliament, the government, any big federal entity that gets hit that's based in Ottawa, generally our Ottawa team will deal with that. Our Montreal team is amazing at working with our international partners on the disruption piece. They were instrumental on Lockbit, on Conti, and with some of the other pieces, including Hive. Our team has had amazing success doing both cyber-enabled fraud at a high level, but again, it has to meet that threshold, and I'll explain that in a second, and then doing also pure cyber. And then our Edmonton and our Vancouver teams, they're more like what the OPP does. So what that means is they're the municipal police, they're the federal police, and they're also the provincial police. So they will have a lot of times where they are having to help other programs. So if there's a homicide or there's a large-scale, organized crime, they will provide that cyber capability to them. So in our space, when I say at the federal level, we're dealing with key economic integrity. So your key infrastructure, your financial sector, your energy, anything that has the potential to impact Canada on a large scale, we are going to get involved. Our focus, so our mandate has shifted slightly for those of you that may have known us from before. Our mandate has shifted slightly to be more looking at what is the infrastructure the bad guys are using. We used to be really focused on, we're just going after this ransomware. It's this team, Ottawa, you're going after this ransomware group, Toronto, you're doing this. Now we're more of a, how do we take away the infrastructure from the bad guys? So that's been a shift, a really welcome shift, because it also supports our partner agencies. So what are our challenges and obstacles? So there's a number of them, and I talked about growing pains. So anyone who has had a dealing with policing in the last little bit, who it may not have been a positive experience. And one thing you will know about me is I don't sugarcoat anything, and if we can always be better. We can always do things differently. I know talking to some of our critical infrastructure partners, their position is, well, why are we even calling the police? Like, what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do for me. We need to get business up and running. So when you look at what what this means when you look at our challenges. It's understanding what we can and cannot do in this space. You know, I can't remember who said it earlier, but talking about the constraints on the bad guys. The bad guys don't have constraints. The bad guys don't have to work within certain parameters. They're not restricted by law. They're not restricted by legal. Bad guy's going to do whatever the bad guy's going to do, and the rest of us have to manage. But we all work in these restrictions, and it's really hard sometimes to explain that without having that opportunity for open communication and dialogue. So one of the challenges there is, what do police do? So if you think we're going to come in and do and I know we've all seen it on TV because I see it and it drives me nuts, where you have like a team comes, barreling in, pull out their badges and be like, everything is going to come to a stop now because we're getting our evidence and we're shutting you down until we get all our evidence. That is wrong. That is not what we are going to do. We're not going to do. We're very mindful that for your companies and your businesses and your brand, and in some instances, keeping the country going, we are not there to get in your way. We are not there to say, hey, shut it down. We are there to work with you. So what that looks like, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but it isn't that. We aren't going to come in and shut that down. Also looking at the reporting structure. So when I say growing pains, yeah, there's growing pains. So right now, I've talked to private sector partners who said, but I did report it. I reported it to CCC, or I reported it through Anti-Fraud Center. So here's the thing. They don't talk to us. I won't get it. But at the same time, I also recognize, in the midst of a crisis, are we really expecting our companies and entities to go and report to 6 different people? That makes no sense. So we are working on what does that look like, and how are you reporting when these things do happen? And also the other side of it, so one of the neat projects we're working on, and I can't say too much about it just yet, but I'm working with one of the really large law firms, very well known in the cyber space, about that legal and police interaction. What does it look like? And it's too easy for legal to say, oh, no, that's privilege, no, we can't work on that. Or no, we can't give you that information, we can't give you those IOCs, we don't care if you have all our data and are showing it to us now. And this happened to us. This happened to us on the NetWalker file. We had arrested Sébastien Vachon Desjardins from NetWalker. He was the guy that eventually got extradited to the US. We seized $34 million in crypto at the time. Still the largest record seizure in the country. That's my team, their amazing team. And we actually had the opportunity to make victims whole again. So, hey, all your costs for getting back up and running, all your remediation costs, what you paid in ransom, this is what we can help you get back. And honestly, we had almost as many companies say, yeah, no thanks, we're done. We've already reported to insurance, we've got paid out, and we're good to go. But what you have to understand is when that happens, everyone's premiums go up. All the costs go up for all of us. And I know for insurance, they were like, what do you mean you could have got the money back? Yeah, I could have got the money back, but nobody wanted to talk to us. And I recognize that. I recognize what the challenges are when you look at your reputational risk, when you look at the stigma. And I think this is a really big piece, and Kelly mentioned it earlier about the comms. This is something that, it was like preaching to the choir. Listening to her talk this morning was like she reached in and was like, here, Lina, I'm going to reach into your heart and pull this out, because that's what it was like. This is exactly it. Everyone knows the first message out the gate is going to be the message that sticks. So have a solid comms. There is no shame in getting hit, but as you all know, and we've seen it time and time again, when you try to hide it or cover it up, what ends up happening is it looks like, now, what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to cover up? The likelihood is it's going to come out. Be the first one out the gate, control the narrative, have the message out there that you want. Hey, we got hit, but we did this, we're working on this, and now we're doing this. That message can be adapted to put you in a position of strength rather than a position of defense. So that's something to keep in mind when you are working with us, because we aren't going to be the ones to out you to the media, because that's another big fear. We're going to come right out and say, okay, media, hey, just so you know, so-and-so got hit. I don't know if you guys watch the news, but RCMP and media, sometimes they don't like us. And so the last thing we're going to do is out anyone else, to throw anyone else under that bus. That is not our job, and that is absolutely something we won't do. So looking at reporting, it has to be genuine, and it can't be a checkbox. So on the reporting side, I can't stress enough how important it is. We all know cybercrime is ridiculously underreported. It really is. And for all the reasons I mentioned already, why do people not report? So all the things I mentioned, but also here's why you should be reporting. Something to think about. If you don't report, we have no idea what's going on out there. And I'm going to bring this back to when I was in uniform. So when I was a uniformed police officer in BC in the 90s, I remember going to a car that had broken into. Pretty common, you know. And at that time, and this is again where I date myself, kids were stealing change, CDs, whatever you left in the car. Nobody has CDs, but whatever. And this is what was getting stolen. And I remember going to one scene, and this guy was so mad. And I'm like, okay, I'm here to take your report. And he's like, you guys have known about this forever. You haven't done anything. We've all got broken into. This is like the third house on my street, and I know those streets. And I remember thinking, I went back and I ran it, like I had dispatch run it, and they're like, nope, this is the first report. Because everyone assumed that everybody else was reporting in, and everybody assumed that the police knew that there was a problem. Had we known there was a problem, we would have been more proactive. And that means we would have had extra patrols. We would have examined the trends. In those days, we didn't have analysts embedded, but right now, we would have analysts embedded looking at what those trends are. But if no one tells us, we can't help you. So this is, again, like I know that takes it right down to a much smaller level, but it's the same thing in cyber. If we understand where the trends are and where the, and it doesn't matter if somebody didn't get in. So, well, I was going to report it, but I didn't see the point because they weren't successful. It doesn't matter. Report it anyway, because then we understand where the threats are coming from. So what does partnerships and collaboration look like? So I talked about being proactive. You should never, ever, ever meet someone for the first time in the midst of a crisis. Emotions are running high, and there is no guideline. And I know a lot of you do tabletop exercises or sims in your own agencies or in companies, but think about involving people from outside. So I attend a number of private sector tabletops. My team will attend some on large scale, and we do all kinds. But what it is at least it gives you something. And human nature will say that in the midst of anything, you're going to go on autopilot. And if you've already done something, that is going to be what you were going to do, or at least have a framework of what it's going to look like. And when you're doing that, have us considered in there. So as I mentioned, there was a private sector partner who said, like, I was not even thinking of police in the first 2 weeks. I'm just thinking of getting my business up and running. Yes, absolutely. But if you think of us early on and you have these conversations, and again, communication, you will know, what are the police looking for? What documents do we need? What IOCs? What information that you may have that may not be there if you are full bore ahead? And most of your companies that you're going to work with, your incident response, they're going to have an understanding that the police are going to look for this, and this is what they want. If you involve us at the earlier stages, we have a much better chance of maybe we aren't going to be able, and I'm not going to lie and say, oh yeah, we're going to get the bad guy every time, but it helps us help the next person. It may help you get back your money. It may help us, at least at the very minimum, if it's coming from outside of the country, attribute it to someone. And at the end of the day, that helps everybody all around. So right now, write it in the playbook, look at your engagement meetings. These should never be one-offs. It should be a continuous collaboration. Meeting, working together. In what we're trying to do at the federal level is have a Team Canada approach. So working with CCCS, working with CISO, working with CRA, CBSA, and the goal for that is a much more robust response in general to help you so that we can all help each other. So again, we were talking about what this looks like in the future. So one of the things my team is trying to do, and I call it Future Forward because we are trying to build a regional model, and I hate silos, and I have to tell you, it's the happiest moment in this entire conference has been everybody talks about collaboration and teamwork, and you can feel it. It's a vibe. It's here, and this is exactly the energy we need to bring to how we do policing. We cannot use the old models. So what are we doing? We are currently looking at building, or I'm probably 12 months into building a model that involves key private sector partners and policing to fight cybercrime. So, everyone has a resource shortage, and no lie, in the federal government, we can't pay what you guys can pay, and I recognize that. But at the same time, maybe we can put together some of our resources to address those skills gaps while we get people up and succession plan and plan for the future. So we've got some really amazing initiatives with some of the big banks and some of the telecos and insurance on how do we share those resources? How do we bring in, if there's something that we are stuck with, like smart contracts, for example, how do we get that really highly specialized training around that? Where's the threat detection teams? We can now, we're in early stages, we're at the NDA stage, should be launching in the next I'd say the next few months. But what we're looking at is having that so that when we do have something we're dealing with, we can go to our private sector partners and actually have a really robust response to that. And that also involves training. So looking at interchanges, so some of the places we're doing interchanges with. So if I send someone on the network intrusion SANS course, we aren't going to use it right away in my work, but this is something that's integral for my team to understand. So we have worked out interchange opportunities with the telecos and the banks that if someone does the SANS course, one of the SANS courses, they can go to the SOC and work for a month. I do have to find a way to write in there saying, please don't steal my people, and offer them more money, because that's going to be a really real risk, especially because our security clearance process is forever, by the way. But again, what does that look like? And then training opportunities, lunch and learns, workshops, where we learn from each other. And where that benefits the private sector partners is we're not wasting your time when we come in. So if we're coming to you with a production order, like we execute, we have a paper, we want to come in and say, hey, the courts have authorized us to ask for this information. I want all of this. Those open lines of communication have taught us, thankfully, that I don't need to ask for all this because, number one, it costs that teleco or that bank a lot of money to put all that information together to get it to law enforcement who maybe don't need to ask for all that. Maybe you can have all that information by just asking for something a little more strategic. So now we're not wasting your time with all asking for things that aren't really necessary. So it's evolving. At the end of the day, we can't do what we've always done because cyber is different, but it really is an opportunity for us to all work together. We have co-op students we're going to be sharing with private sector partners. But I think I'm most excited about the part that when we all work together, we all actually get to combat this. There is more than enough work for everybody, as you all know, unfortunately, but it really is a team sport. Thank you. Oh, maybe you don't need to hear me. Oh, it's good they cut me out. If you do have questions, the only thing I ask is, I know Bill 26 is a very contentious one. That is literally like, maybe we need wine for that. And that's a whole presentation in and of itself. But if anyone has any, I can't see any of you. So if I talk too fast and all my people who are like, Lina, we're going to tell you when to slow down, I couldn't see you anyway, so sorry. Any questions? Anybody? No? We're good? Okay. All right, we're good. Thanks all.